Morning. This is Greg Bafidis, the founder and chairman of the Posse List. I'm at the Georgetown University Law Center for their conference, Law Firm Evolution. Is it a brave new world, or are we facing business as usual? My guest this morning is Professor Stephen Mayson of the Legal Services Policy Institute, who yesterday gave a rather, shall we say, interesting presentation in which the big debate was business models. And could you tell us a little bit more about what you presented yesterday, Stephen?
Yeah, what I was trying to do was find a way of defining or describing what a business model really is, because people have a conversation and use the term, but I'm never convinced they're actually using the same concept when they're having a conversation with each other. So I was just trying to unpick what that was, and I haven't found anything in the business literature or the academic literature that says here's what a business model is or looks like, except to the extent you can get sort of off-the-shelf packaged business models that you're supposed to shoehorn your own business into. And I tried that with law firms.
One size fits all.
Yeah, it didn't work. So what I was really trying to say is let's not try and say what a business model is and can we use it, but let's work out what the characteristics of a business model are.
How do you think law firms are approaching this, though? I mean, are they basically saying this is really outside of our expertise, we need to bring in consultants, or do they think, are they being cocky and saying, oh, we're lawyers, we could do this?
By and large, I think it's probably the same approach to business models as they have to strategy, which is it's not that big a deal. We're intelligent, we can work it out. They've probably worked out strategy better than they have business models, because I think there's a confusion in lawyers' minds, maybe the business world generally, about what a business model is and therefore how to talk about it.
Do you find a different attitude, though, between the Magic Circle, for instance, and law firms you work with here in the States?
Not with firms at the same level.
Okay.
There's quite a lot of comparability.
There's Big Law UK and there's Big Law US, and
they're pretty much the same.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the difference might be that Big Law UK is probably slightly more open to competition because the regulatory framework's different than the US perspective. But by and large, they're pretty much the same.
Okay. Much of the conference, we've heard a kind of a theme, and it was expressed at your conference as well as other parts of the seminar, which is that law firms are basically going to turn into corporations, that we're going to have a chief executive officer and a chief operating officer, that the chief executive officer will be kind of the legal guy, and the actual management running of it will be the operations fellow. Do you think that's what we're moving toward?
I think there's been some evidence of that shift over time for probably 10, if not 20 years. Slow to start with, and it goes in fits and starts. Some firms go down the corporate line, find it doesn't work for them, and come back to a more partnership ethos, structure, style of management. But I think if you take the trends over time, almost certainly we're going to end up with a much more corporate style of management, and probably in time the corporate framework rather than the partnership framework. The pressures on big law firms is such that they have to adopt the same sort of business structure as any other large business.
But as we heard from the chairman of ORIC and the chairman from Kirkland, we have these tremendous resources. We're not dead, despite what everyone says. Big law is not dead. But he says it's a new environment. One of the things that Richard Susskind said last night during the dinner was these private equity firms that are coming in and making investments in the UK and Australia, making a bit of an impression on continental Europe, but not big. You think that will come here? You think do you think the law firms will eventually have to say, yes, we need to do this?
I think eventually they will, yeah, because the competition is not just national and domestic, it is global. And if some of your competitors have access to resources and particularly capital that you don't, there will come a time for certain things you want to do that the money won't be there unless you're allowed to access external capital. So I think that genie's out of the bottle.
Okay. Can you give us a short brief on the Legal Services Policy Institute as far as what you do?
We're part of the charitable activities of the College of Law, which is an educational charity. And our mission is to track what's happening in the legal services market, particularly but not exclusively in the UK, and look at how it's evolving and what sorts of regulatory and other practice management issues are going to affect whether or not we get a decent, effective, well-regulated and ethical marketplace for legal services.
Okay. The UK statute that everyone is talking about, the Law Act, that will come into place when?
The Legal Services Act is fully in force pretty much now, but there are consequential regulatory frameworks that need to be put into place. So the bit that most people are really looking for is the alternative business structure, which will allow external investment, multidisciplinary practice almost without limit. That's expected to be fully enforced by October 2011.
Okay, great. Stephen, thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.